Well, our next guest is, without question, one of our favorite guests, and apparently has a bit of a headache. Couldn't make it in. I'm sorry, Brian. I'm sorry to annoy you, but how you feeling, buddy? This is Brian Jones from the NFL and many other things. And what is the name of your show? The Brian Jones Show?
I'm trying to get him to name it that, Artie. It's the Mojo Show on CBS Sports Radio.
Mojo Show, and I've been on the show. It's a great show, but no, honestly, one of my favorite guests, the great Brian Jones. What's up, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm playing hurt, but all's good.
You are very, very... What?
What?
No, go ahead.
I said congrats to your new addition to the show, and what a hell of a week for him to be on this show. I didn't know all that good stuff. I knew there was some great stuff happening at Stanford.
Yeah.
They got all kinds of things going on now.
Well, yeah, John Ritchie, who was he's a fellow NFL guy, but he was on the Raiders for 5 years. And you guys, let's bond a little bit here. Yeah, Stanford, this guy lifted weights with Jason Collins and was recruited by Jerry Sandusky. John, your thoughts on it?
You never know, and I'm sure, and I've said this many times on our show, I'm positive that there were some gay guys in our locker room, that there are gay guys in locker rooms today in all sports, and I back when I was playing, I'm a little older than you, John, I've come full circle on this topic, but when you play in a sport that's so predicated on machismo that I think it would have been a very difficult topic to broach back then, but now it's been in the public sphere and it's been talked about and for so many years now out in the open, and you've got generations of kids that are growing up, and it's no problem. They're going to look back on us and the things we've dealt with, from race relations to this topic, homosexuality, and like, what the hell was wrong with those folks?
I always felt like sports were the great equalizer. Just everyone would judge you based on how you handled your business, how you practiced, how you went out there on the field. I always felt that way. But Brian, do you remember having this discussion in the locker room? Like, how come we don't have gay guys on this team? How come if 1 in 10 guys is gay, there's not any on our team, or there seems to be none?
Well, there were guys that we suspected, and we would needle them as you do anyway about any number of topics. So that we had guys we would tease, but as you know, you take care of your own, and no one else could mess with them. We could, and if there were, to answer your question, no, we didn't have the conversation other than in a humorous way when you were messing with guys. But nowadays, I think the locker rooms, they've grown. And as I said earlier, you got generations who are growing up, and this topic has already been in the forefront. So while I think Jason Collins, if he signs with another team, he will get teased and needled by his teammates. But if you're an opponent, you better look out, because they're going to rally around him, and they're going to have his back.
Sure.
Well, that's good. I hope that happens. I do. And it should be the great equalizer sports. I always say, in show business, there's a lot of nepotism going on. Like Jamie Lee Curtis probably almost definitely got into movies because Tony Curtis was her father. Barry Bonds wasn't in the major leagues because Bobby was his father. He was in the major leagues because he could hit the hell out of a baseball. Yeah. The nepotism doesn't work in sports. You got to be good. You're good, you play. And I do think you're right, Brian, with the way it's gone with race relations and stuff. This gay question is the last frontier with all that discrimination. It's the last thing you got to do.
In sports, and society is beating us to the punch. Usually it's sports that's the leader, and it's entertainment that's the leaders. Because, what did black athletes and black folks use to get out of the ghetto and really make a name for themselves? It was entertainment and it was sports.
Right.
And now on this issue, it looks like sports is lagging behind the rest of society. And it goes back to that whole machismo dynamic that's associated with sports. And you look upon as not being tough, and Jason Collins is the totally opposite of that. He's a guy who's always had a physical, very aggressive game. You've got the guy out of England, Garrett Thomas, the rugby player. He was chronicled on Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, and here's one of the fiercest rugby players ever, and yet he's gay. So the stereotypes that we've become accustomed to and think that would showcase what a gay person looks like, we need to rethink that, because just like all of us who are heterosexual, they come in different shapes and sizes, and so we've got to be mindful of that and not prejudge.
Sure. Moving on from that topic, it is fascinating to talk about, but, recently we just had the NFL draft. I know you're really involved with college football. What were your thoughts? What did you take away from this year's draft?
Well, as everyone says, you really didn't have that marquee name like you'll have next year with a Jadeveon Clowney. But I still thought there was a lot of depth in the draft. I thought there were a ton of good players, and so that was the key, and really finding that player who could help you immediately and fill a need. So usually, if there's a great player on the board, no matter what you need, you're going to snatch him up if he's still there when you're picking. This year, it was more about just biding your time and staying put and making sure you address your needs. And I thought Minnesota, I thought they did pretty well. They had those 3 first-round picks, and, they addressed the defensive line. They addressed their cornerback position where they needed help, and most importantly, the wide receiver help. They needed to get more explosive with Percy Harvin going to Seattle.
Yep.
So I thought Cordero Patterson, who's not as refined a wide receiver.
No, he needs to work on his routes for sure.
And he said that. We interviewed him, and he said, yeah, that's something I need to work on. But let me tell you something, John. You can't teach and you can't coach what this young man has, and that's just raw talent. We always talk about those cats who are country strong. They don't have to lift weights. Well, this guy is country explosive.
Well, and how about Sharif Floyd, too? I mean, Sharif Floyd, some teams had him at the top of the number 1 pick in the draft. Some prognosticators said he would be the first guy to go.
Yeah.
They picked him up 23rd. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he would go early to the Raiders. They need help there. Richard Seymour, I'm not sure if he's going to come back or not, and they desperately need help in a number of areas, and defensive line was one of them. So he's a guy, junior player, great get off. I was there with the L.A. Raiders when Howie Long was there, and you're talking about a guy who had a get-off and could time the snap. You see that with Sharif Floyd. I'm not saying he's going to be Howie, but he's a guy who has an excellent timing and knows how to get off on the ball. So they did pretty well. I thought Arizona did well. They addressed the offensive line, and then they went and got mentored linebacker. They also got Tyrann Mathieu, and I don't know what the hell's going on with this contract, saying there's no guaranteed money. If there's no guaranteed money, he's not signing. He should be happy he just has a home. But
I'm wondering what you think about that. I do not agree with the decision to take Tyrann Mathieu. They're saying because they got Patrick Peterson, who played with him at LSU and was kind of his mentor, that they felt they could bring him into the fold. Tyrann Mathieu, who's had, more failed drug tests than he can count, according to him. The problem is Patrick Peterson is your punt returner. Patrick Peterson is an all-pro punt returner. Why do you bring in another guy who's probably best suited to be your punt returner? Patrick Peterson is your best cornerback. You bring in another cornerback who's probably lacking some skill in that area. It just seems like you're doubling up with a guy who's going to present more problems than positives.
Well, he says he's changed, and let's hope he has changed for his sake, not just for his football career, but just for his life in general. And to your point, Patrick Peterson is their best cornerback, and what Tyrann Mathieu will do, he will play safety. He's not going to play cornerback. He can play in the slot, but if there was one challenge he had at the collegiate level, it was really in coverage, and he still excelled playing in the SEC. But he will play in the safety position, and of course, they're going to go talk to someone who's a teammate of his, someone who has a personal relationship with him. As you know, when you bring in these type of cases, we did it when we were in New Orleans. New Orleans, when I was playing there, was considering taking Randy Moss, myself, Richard Harvey. We took the young man out to dinner, and let me tell you, it's a whole other story. I'll tell you about that dinner, but we talked about no class. He's
Sounds
come
like
a
fun.
long way. Let me just say that. He's come a long way, but, we took him out and tried to get a feel for him, and then we'd go back and report to the bosses in the front office, say, hey, we thought this, and this. I still thought they should have drafted him because we needed that type of explosive player on the Saints at that time. But I think they really felt that with Patrick Peterson knowing him, and then Bruce Arians, who actually was on the Saints staff one of the years that I was there, he sat down with him and then said, hey, I was taken aback by the guy's honesty, and then was he trying to sell himself? Of course he was.
Yeah.
And he did a hell of a job of it. So, yeah, they're taking a risk, but I think that contract is going to be such where it won't be as painful a risk as it might have been if you had all that guaranteed money tied up into it.
Right.
Well, listen, hey, Brian, can you stick around? We're gonna take a
Sure.
break. Yeah, I know you got that terrible headache, but stick around. We're gonna talk when we come back. I want to talk a little Tim Tebow, and a website came out with a list of 10 sluttiest colleges. I want to see if you've ever contributed to those nicknames in any one of these schools. Slutgers, by the way, Slutgers on the list. All right.
Oh, yeah.
When we'll take a break. Come back with the great Brian Jones right after this.